Right, good afternoon. Today we're going to have a look at leaf structure again, and we're going to add some more detail about what the function or job of each of the different parts of the leaf is, and also add in a couple of other structures we didn't talk about last lesson. So you look at your notes from last lesson, you drew a diagram of the tissues that were found in a leaf. Okay, now what I'd like you to do to start with is to turn that over, get yourself a piece of paper, and see if you can remember all of the different tissues and what they're called. So you don't have to draw the world's most beautiful diagram, but it would be a really good start. So let's have a think, what can we remember? So if you pause the video now and try to draw and label a leaf from memory, okay? Okay, so I've just drawn the top 3 layers of the leaf. On the very, very top we've got the waxy cuticle. The next layer is called the upper epidermis, and then the layer below that, the palisade mesophyll. Okay, then just trying to remember underneath, we've got some cells with air gaps, which is what we call the spongy mesophyll. If you missed the last lesson, you either need to go back and do it, or this is essentially what was covered in it, so make sure that you just get up to speed on this. Okay, and then finally, and I'm just going to draw this slightly differently, we've got the lower, I'm just going to leave a little gap in it for reasons you'll find out in a minute. We've got the lower epidermis. Okay, so that's just the names of the different parts of the leaf that we did last lesson that you should already know. So what we're going to add in now is, what are the functions or the jobs of all those different parts of the leaf? Okay, so we need to know, what do they do? So the first one, the waxy cuticle. Plants that live in deserts have got more wax on them, and they've got thicker waxy cuticles. So that gives you a bit of a hint about what they do. The job of the waxy cuticle is to reduce water loss. Okay, so if you think about it, with the sun, that's an R, with the sun shining down on a leaf, the top of it is going to let water evaporate out really, really quickly. The waxy cuticle's there because it's a waterproof layer, and it stops water from evaporating from the top of the leaf. Okay, now the upper epidermis, we don't need to worry too much about its function. The next thing that's most important is this layer here, the palisade mesophyll. If you're a plant, this is one of your most important layers, because the job of the palisade mesophyll is photosynthesis. Okay, so the palisade mesophyll carries out photosynthesis, which means that it absorbs the light that's coming down into the leaf, and inside of its chloroplasts, so we can draw in lots of little chloroplasts, inside of the chloroplasts, photosynthesis occurs, which uses that light energy to produce glucose for the plant. So that's a really important layer. Okay, so the palisade mesophyll's job is photosynthesis. Palisade mesophyll cells contain lots and lots of chloroplasts. Okay, so if you see a palisade cell, they've got tons of chloroplasts in them, because that's where photosynthesis occurs. Okay, so we've got the waxy cuticle here, which is this layer at the top, which is reducing water loss. We've got the upper epidermis, we won't worry too much about what that does. We've then got this layer here, which is the palisade mesophyll, which carries out photosynthesis and has lots of chloroplasts. The next layer down here, the spongy mesophyll, has got lots of air gaps in, because what you have to remember is that carbon dioxide is needed for photosynthesis, so it needs to be able to diffuse through the gaps. We're not going to worry about writing too much about that. And then we've got the layer epidermis. There are two more parts, though, that I really wanted to add and to explain to you. Okay, now the first one is right down in the middle of the layer epidermis. So I left a gap. That's because the bottom of the cell actually has a gap. Okay, so the lower epidermis, sorry, bottom of the leaf. So the lower epidermis has lots of tiny little holes in it. And those little holes are called a stoma. Stoma is the singular, or the plural of that, so we put a little PL for plural, is stomata. So a leaf has lots and lots of stomata, or one of them is called a stoma. Okay, and the job of that stoma, or stomata, is to just let the gases in. So we talked about gases are needed up here for photosynthesis. That carbon dioxide can get in, diffuse up, and get to the palisade layer. Now, each side of the stoma are two cells. I've made them here in dark blue. Those two cells are really important because they can open and shut. They're a bit like a door. Well, this is a bit like a door. You can open and shut the stoma. And the cells either side, this is easy to remember, they are called guard cells because they guard the stoma. Okay? So that is an example of a guard cell. And the really important job of the guard cells is to open or close the stoma. So if a plant is in a very dry conditions and it really does not want to lose any water, it's probably got a thick waxy cuticle, and it can, if it wants, close its stoma. Its guard cells can close its stoma to stop water getting out. Okay, and then the additional part here that we want to add in the middle, there's a great big part. And if you remember last lesson, I showed you a leaf and I showed you how I cut through it to see this view of the tissues. Well, in there you noticed that there were veins. Okay, so the vein in the leaf is a great big round bit, and inside that there are two different types of tissues, some near the top, some near the bottom, and they are called phloem and xylem. I'm not going to worry too much about which bit's which, but the phloem and the xylem are found inside veins, and they are for transport around the plant. So whereas we have got blood to transport substances around our bodies, plants have phloem and xylem to do that. Okay, so what have we learnt in addition? What have we learnt in addition to last lesson? We've learnt that the waxy cuticle reduces water loss. We've learnt that the palisade mesophyll is for photosynthesis and it has lots of chloroplasts to do that. We've learnt that there is some xylem and phloem within the vein, which is for transport. And we've learnt that there are holes in the bottom of the leaf called stoma, and they are opened and closed with the help of guard cells.